Okay, so in this next section, we're going to go over perhaps the most advanced rigging concept for this control rig, which is something called a reverse foot. The purpose of a reverse foot is to allow a foot to do everything that a foot can do. If we take a look at our foot right now, we have the ability to lift it, and we have the ability to rotate it, but there's a lot of things it can't really do. For example, when we pivot from the middle. We don't really pivot from the heel. We don't really pivot from the toe. So if you wanted a character to turn their toes inward, it would work with this somewhat, but if it was planted on the ground, we'd have to do a lot of counter animating to make it look right. So the purpose of this next step is to allow us to have a lot more functionality to the foot and to make it act like a real foot would. So this begins by creating an external joint hierarchy. The first joint is going to be for the heel. So let me go ahead and create that. We're going to create a skeleton here. We're going to create joints, and we're just going to create our first joint here. And I'll do this from the side view so we can see this, which is going to be for the heel of the foot. And we'll correct the placements for this afterwards. But that's going to be the first joint is the heel. Then the next one is going to be for the toe end. Then we're going to go to the ball of the foot and then to the ankle. Now, the reason this is called a reverse foot is because the hierarchy order. Rather than the ankle being in charge of everything, the heel is in charge of everything, and then the toe, then the ball, then the ankle. So that's going to be the system we want to have in place. From here, we want to get this placed onto our actual geometry. One of the first things we're going to want to do is just snap to vertice onto the backside of the ankle here. And we want to get this set to be the vertice that we consider the back of the foot. So I'm going to place it right there for the heel. After that, we want to place the joints to their corresponding joint location. So I'm going to select this toe joint and V to snap to vertex to that toe joint. Then I'm going to go to the ball joint, and I'm going to V to snap to vertex to that ball joint. And then I'll do the same here with the ankle. I'll select this one, V snap to vertex. Now, if you're having a hard time seeing these, another good practice is to change their size. You can come to the base and do a select hierarchy, and you can either make these smaller or larger than the foot. In this case, I'll make them larger. We could set them to something like 1, so they're really easy to see, and we can get that set up. We do have to do this for each foot. Now that we have this complete, we can go ahead and bring this across to the other side, and we can just snap it to the same vertice over there, and that should align everything up. So I'm going to Control D and just V to snap to vertex there, and that should place that onto the other side. It's a good practice to name these. I'm going to select both and isolate them, and as a matter of fact, you might just want to do one and then duplicate it and do the other, but we can go ahead and name these. So we're going to start with the top here. Actually, let's start with the bottom since we created it in the bottom. And we're just going to make this RL, RF for reverse foot, and we'll go ahead and make that heel. And then we can come here to the toe. We can make this RL, RF, toe. We can come in this to R or L, RF, ball. And this will be RL, RF, ankle. And we can repeat that process. If you want to, you can just copy the names from this one over to here. I'll just type it out, RF, heel. This one's going to be RR, RF, toe. This will be RR, RF, ball. And this one will be RL, or R, RF, ankle. Okay, so that will get the base naming set up here. Once we have these set up, we're ready to start giving these a bit more functionality. So the first thing we're going to do is just take the heel. We're going to shift select our box control and P to parent. That way this follows with the box and it's in place. You'll see it's separate from the rig. It's not going to be part of it. It is its own entity. We can then take the other heel, shift select its box, P to parent, and get those set up. It's good to work these simultaneously, so that way we get the same result. Okay, so now we need to go ahead and parent a few other things to this and make it function correctly. One of the things we're going to need to do is add some banking controls, which will allow the foot to go on one side or the other. Now, to visualize this better, let me come in here to our general editors and hypergraph hierarchy so we can see how this reverse foot is coming along. You can see this is it nested underneath our current box control. You can use locators for this if you want to, or you could use groups. I prefer to use groups just because it's a little bit easier to set them up. What I'm going to do is hit Control G to add a group on top of here. And with this group, I can hit D to move the pivot and snap it to the side of the foot I would like it to roll on. So I'm going to snap it to here. And if I press E now, you'll see it will make it so it can roll this entire area sideways and roll the foot. And that's going to give us the ability to make the toe kind of roll over that pivot. I might actually want to make it lower, though, onto the area contacting the ground. So I'm actually going to move it down to here, so that way the pivot moves from here. Now, I could go ahead and name this. This is going to be my L bank A. Then I can add another group here to the heel. That way it has two groups above it that are affecting it. Control G, and we'll go ahead and place this on the other side. I'm going to hit D and V, and I want to place it along the same line. So I think this was the spot I placed it on the other side. We can just click on the other one to double check. And it looks like I may have placed it back one. So I'll go ahead and move this one back one, D to V. And we'll just go ahead and make this our L bank B. So I'll just copy that name and copy and paste and B. So that way we have one to go this way, and then we'll have one to go this way. And we can do the same over here. We can grab that heel control, and we can Control G, and we can just D and then V to snap to vertex to the bank location we want. And we'll make that correlate to the same side as the other one. So my outer one was A, my inner one was B. So we'll go ahead and make this our R bank B. And then we'll Control G that. We'll D and V to snap and place its pivot right there. And we'll just make this our R bank A. All right, so that is going to give us our base setup here. Now, we need to go ahead and make this have functionality. So what we're going to do is parent each IK handle to the closest reverse foot point. So when it comes to the ankle, we're going to select the reverse foot and parent that. So let's set this up. We'll take this ankle here. We're going to shift select the reverse foot and P to parent. Then we're going to come down here to the ball. We're going to take its IK handle, and this can be a little bit hard to see because we do have that locator there. Make sure you're not selecting the locator and you're selecting the actual handle. You can click on the handle here to get that selected. So just kind of be aware of that. You'll see when I selected the handle here, it's that little arrow. We can do the same here and just make sure we have it correct. If you need to, you can turn off the locator. I got lucky there and selected the handle. So we're going to select that handle, shift select the respective joint, P to parent. Come out here to the toe, do the same thing, select that handle, select the respective joint, P to parent. Now, to make sure this is done correctly, you can just check and make sure it still functions as an IK leg. But then you can also come in here to your banks, and if you rotate your banks now, you'll see the functionality these have. So you'll see when I rotate one bank, it banks from that corner, banks from the other. So hopefully those make sense why they're there now. And we can also use the other parts of this foot to control this in various ways. So let's get that set for the other side. We're going to come in here and we're going to select the handle for the ankle, shift select the ankle control, P to parent. Come down here and find the IK handle. You can see I'm clicking on the locator. Fortunately, Maya prioritizes the handle, so it's easy to get. Shift select the joint, P to parent. Come down here to the toe, shift select the toe, and P to parent. And once we have that set up, we are all set with our foot control to start giving it functionality. Now, that was a lot. Just remember, you can test to make sure it's set up correctly afterwards to function by moving the foot and then coming in here to things like the bank. Just make sure that rotates correctly, that one rotates correctly, and then you can come into things like the individual joints here and make sure those function correctly. And you'll see the various movements we can get out of here, which is going to be what we're aiming for. Okay, so let's go ahead and save. And let's pause here because I want you to get this right before moving forward. So as a challenge, what I want you to do is set up your reverse foot. Go ahead and create the joint chain, add in your banks to it, and then parent it into your rig. And then what we're going to get to next is setting up attributes. And then after that, we're going to give these functionality. We're going to make our attributes function. Okay, so go ahead and get your reverse foot joint set up, and then we'll get into the attributes and the functionality next. So now we need to go ahead and set up some controls for this reverse foot, and we're going to add those directly to our feet controls by adding in some custom controls. So let's come in here, select both of these at the same time. I'm going to select one foot, shift select the other. Then we can come to edit and add attribute, and we can go ahead and add in a series of attributes to this. So the first one we're going to add is called foot roll. So I'm going to add foot underscore roll there, check your spelling. And then we're going to make sure this is a float, which means it can have decimal points. For a minimum, I'm going to set it to -10 and a maximum of +10 and then hit add. We can then add in another attribute here, which I will add toe twist. And we can go ahead and give it a minimum of -10 and a maximum of +10 and hit add. Then we're going to get in heel twist. So heel underscore twist. We're going to give that a -10 and a maximum of +10 and hit add. And then we're going to add in bank for our side-to-side movements. We're going to set this to a minimum of -10 and a maximum of +10. Then the last one we're going to add is just called toes. And we're going to set this to a minimum and maximum of nothing. That means it has an infinite range, but a default of 0, and hit add. And that will get our various attributes added. What we can do, though, is we can highlight the scale and visibility here because we don't need these, and do a channels lock and hide selected. That way they're out of our way. Okay, so once we have that in place, make sure you save. It's good to do that before we start adding functionality to these, and just double check their spelling. If you do run into an issue where you may have misspelled something, you can click on your attributes here, just come to edit, and inside of here, you have the ability to edit attributes. This allows you to come in here and make changes after the fact. So you can see we can change things like the minimum, the maximum. You can come down here and change their spelling if you would like to. So you do have the ability to do all of that if you need to. For example, with the toes, that is going to rotate the toes, but I might want to change it to something like ball or toe bend. But I think we'll leave it to toes for now, and we can always change the name later if we need to. Okay, but that is going to be it. So as a challenge, what I want you to do is get those attributes added in, and then we're going to go through each of them and we're going to add functionality to it. Now that we have our custom attributes, it's time to give them functionality. The way we're going to give them functionality is using the set-driven key, which we used previously to add squash and stretch to our bouncing ball rig. The set-driven key allows us to use another object's attributes as a timeline opposed to the timeline itself. So what that means is when this object's value is at this number, this happens somewhere else. So what we're going to do is we're going to do that using the foot roll, toe twist, heel twist, and bank here. And we'll go ahead and start with the foot roll. Now, if you need to find the set-driven key menu, it lives under the animation shelf under key. And we come in here to the key menu here and find set-driven key. Go into the little over arrow here and grab set. In order to use this, you need a driver, which is what is the value that is controlling the change, or what we might think of as the timeline. And then you need a driven, which is going to be what is being driven. Now, we have to do this one foot at a time, unfortunately, but we'll start with this foot since it's closest to us, and we'll load the controller as a driver. The first attribute we're going to do is the foot roll. Now, the purpose of the foot roll is to roll back onto the heel, like this, and to also roll onto the ball of the foot, like this. We're going to need to select each of the joints that are going to need to be keyed to make this happen, which in this case is going to be the heel joint, the toe tip joint, and lastly is going to be the ball joint. And we'll go ahead and load driven. We can then highlight these, and we have to find the attribute these are going to be driven on. If we grab the rotation and we rotate along the axes, we can see that's going to be the rotate Z. So we can click on Rotate Z here, and that's going to select the Rotate Z for all of these, and then we're ready to do our first key. So what we'll do is we'll click Key, and what that will do is when foot roll is at 0, everything will be at 0. Now let's go ahead and set foot roll into the positive. I'll increase that to 10. I'm doing that by middle mouse button dragging. When it's at 10, let's go ahead and have it rotate up onto the heel. Now, when deciding how far this should go, never be exact. You want to be at and then a little bit extra. And that way the animator can really get in here and make this thing move. So I'm going to crank this up pretty high, maybe up here to like 70, 75. And I know that looks absurd, but you have to think of the different position our feet might get into. At some point, this may be applicable if the legs stretch out and we're doing a fall or a jump. So just be aware of that. So with that set to 10, I'll go ahead and click key. And now when we toggle between 0 and 10, you can see it's going to lift. Now we want to go -10, but we're going to do it a little bit differently. Let's go to -5, and we're going to do a sort of halfway thing. So at -5, we're going to get it up on the ball of the foot here, and we can push that to an extreme, like so. And I'll probably keep it an even number, so maybe something like 80. And we'll just hit key, so that way when we go to 0, it's here, +10 there, -5, it's here. And then at -10, let's go ahead and give it a little bit of toe lift here. So maybe go to like 25 and then hit key. So now 0, we're flat, 10, we're lifted, and -5, we have the ball up, and then -10, we're lifting the toe a bit. All right, so we've programmed all that functionality into here, which is really great. Now, the downside is we have to do this on the other side, and we have to do it in the same amount. So let's go ahead and explore that process, how we're going to match that up. The first thing is to select this control, load it as the driver, and select the foot roll. Then we have to select the same joints, the heel, the toe, and then the ball. And we're going to load those as the driven. And we should be able to select Rotate Z, all the same, and then click key so it's zeroed out. From here, I can go into the foot roll to +10. And if I come to this one, I can set this one to +10 and look at the values. So I set the rotation here to be 75. So with this one at +10, I'll set that one to be 75. And then once we're satisfied, we can click key. And now between 0 and 10, that should go the same amount. I'll then set this one to -5. And I'll come over and set this one to -5. And we can take a look at the amount we put on this. So we rotated that to 80. So we can do the same thing here. We'll just grab this one and we'll rotate this one to 80. And then we can click key. So that way, when this goes to 0, it's flat, and -10, it goes. Now we have a little bit of an issue here because that didn't work. So what's the deal there? Well, what we need to do is change these and make sure that this is keyed at that value. For some reason, it didn't get keyed at that value. And it doesn't actually look like it's part of the key at all here. So what that indicates to me is I grabbed the wrong attributes here. You see, this one's the IK handle. So what I need to do there is right-click and break connection on the Rotate Z. And I need to come in here and I need to add the RF handle for this. So let's go ahead and set this back to 0 here so we can see these all. And I'm going to select the toe tip or heel toe tip and make sure I get the joint and load those as driven. And I keep getting the IK handle. So you got to be careful with that. Just select somewhere it's not. And there we go. Okay, so now I can restart this with Rotate Z. Let me make sure this is at 0 and we can key that. We can then take the foot roll to 10 and it looks like it's still working, but I'm still going to want to set a key. That way that ball joint's in there. And now if I set this to -5, I can come in here to the ball and I can rotate this 80 degrees. And then we can hit key. And that should work. So remember, you can override things inside of here. And that's something important to keep in mind. So if you make a mistake, you can go back and fix it. And I'm kind of glad that happened so you could see it. All right, so at -10, we can see we're rotating this 25. So that's the last one we need. So let me just set this to -10. We'll rotate this to 25, and then we'll hit key. So now if we go ahead and take both these controls at the same time, we set them to 0, and then we highlight this in middle mouse drag, they should function correctly, rocking back and forth, like so. So we have functioning feet. Now, there is one other thing to be aware of, though, when you are doing this, and that's that this is animation data. So something that can be useful is to come in here to your Windows Animation Editor and Graph Editor. And if you take a look at the joints here, if we go ahead and select these, you'll see they actually have animation curves. And notice that they have an ease in, ease out. A good practice when you're creating these controls is to shift select all the various curves involved. So these are all the animation curves. Highlight them and set them to be a linear motion. That way there is no ease in, ease out. They have a one-to-one correlation to the value. The reason why we want to do this is to give animators the ability to control the ease in, ease out, not to have ease in, ease out on top of their ease in, ease out. It's just kind of a good practice to come in here and do. Okay, so that's going to give us our first attribute is the foot roll. That's one of the more complex ones because it involves 3 joints and kind of some different shapes, but you can see how that's going to make our animation of this character a lot easier because if we need to get this to go up onto the ball of its foot, we can use foot roll. And if we need it to go onto its heels, we can also use foot roll. So very nice control to have and great for doing things like walk cycles. Okay, so as a challenge, what I want you to do is go ahead and try adding in the foot roll yourself. When you're done, make sure you save. These are all major milestones we're about to add in here, and then we'll move into the next attribute for the reverse foot. All right, so the next attribute we need to do is toe twist. And what the toe twist is going to do is it's going to come to the toe here, and it's going to rotate this out, and it's going to rotate this in. So this is the purpose of the toe twist. And notice we're rotating this one on rotate Y. Generally, when we're creating these controls, there's only a single channel that is affected. So we'll come into our set driven key. Now, if you're coming back to this, it's under the animation shelf key and set driven key, and you just go into the set option there. We're going to load in the driver. Always reload it because you don't remember if it was left or right foot, or pay attention to left or right because it will make your life easier. So load that in. This time we're going to grab toe twist, and we just need the toe for this one. So we're going to load this as driven. And as we checked, we're going to see that's a rotate Y value. So we'll click on rotate Y. Now, the first key is usually at 0. So just make sure toe twist is at 0 and hit key. And then we can decide what plus or minus means. So I think plus would be outward. So I'm going to do +10. And I'm going to rotate this outward. And I want to look for when the rig kind of starts to break. So right here, we hit our maximum. I think I'll go ahead and set that to -50. And we'll call that good and just hit key. And then usually you go the opposite direction the same amount, but not always. Depends on the rig. So I'm just going to come to my control now and set this back to -10. And then rotate inward the opposite direction, which is going to be 50, and I think that should be good. And we can click key. And now if we go ahead and check out our toe twist, we can now toe twist. Now, something that's also really cool about this is this pairs with things like foot roll. Okay, so now we have to do it with the opposite side. We're going to go ahead and load this as the driver. We're going to load the tip as the driven, grab that rotate Y and grab that toe twist and just hit key to start with. Now, an interesting secret is to go the opposite direction. So I'm going to set my toe twist to +10. I'm going to set this toe twist to +10. Instead of this one being the same one, which was a -50 rotation, it's actually going to be a +50 rotation outward, like so. So that way they are mirrored. Now remember, when you look in a mirror, what happens is one side is actually the opposite of the other. So if you have like text on your shirt or something like that, it will read backwards. That's the idea of mirroring, is it moves the same, but it looks the opposite, if that makes sense. So we're going to key that. And then we'll go ahead and just flip this to -10 now, and we'll go the opposite direction with this rotation here, which is going to be -50. And then we'll go ahead and key that. And what this will do is if we go ahead and take our toe twists now and set these to 0, and I go positive, they'll twist out, negative, they'll twist in. And you can see how we're starting to get some cool poses with this. And of course, our foot rolls all work together too. So look at that. Some very easy animations to begin with. All right, so that is going to be the toe twist. Really easy. Just grab that in joint and we're going to rotate out, going to rotate in. Okay, so as a challenge, what I want you to do is get your toe twist set up. Remember to save after you complete it, because it's always good to save after every step, just in case you make a mistake somewhere. And we'll go ahead and add in the heel twist next. Okay, so the heel twist is a lot like the toe twist. We're going to select the handle. We're going to load that as the driver. Click on our heel twist, and then we're going to select the heel, load that as our driven, and this one is also going to rotate on Y outward, so we'll grab its rotate Y. Once we're satisfied with that, we can click key, and then we can start to increase the heel twist. So with the heel twist, I'll go ahead and increase this to 10, and we'll do the same thing where we heel twist outward in a positive way. Now, your feet can go sideways a lot further than they can go inward and outward from the toe, just due to the heel. 90 degrees is a bit much. I'll go ahead and give these about 100, so that way it can go beyond, and I actually might give it 110, like so, and just go ahead and hit key. It's a bit extreme, but it's better to have more than it is to have too little. Now I'll take this in the opposite direction to -10, and I'll do the same thing. I'll just come to the heel here, and we'll go inwards -110. Once again, a lot, but it's better to have more than less. So now this will pivot from the heel. And yes, we can use this with the toe twist as well. It's a weird combination, but you definitely can, and does open up some interesting opportunities. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a look at the other one. I'm going to click the control and load that as the driver and grab heel twist. And I'll take the heel here and I'll go ahead and drag this into here by making it the driven. And we'll just grab that rotate Y and we can click key. What we're going to do is rotate this outward now. So it's going to be -110. And then we'll click key. And then we can do the same on here. We can go ahead and set this to -10. And now we'll just go the opposite way. You can actually click here to access your heel, which is pretty cool. And we'll just take that rotate Y to +110 now and key. So now our heel twist should be in here. Set those to 0. And when I go positive, they'll go out. When I go negative, they'll go in. So just like that, we have the ability to heel pivot, which is really cool. Now, at this point, we're pretty much done with the animation on these joints. I don't think we're going to do any more animation on the joints themselves. So this would be a good point to set these to be linear again. If you come in here to your Windows Animation Editor, Graph Editor, and I'll select one heel and select another heel, and we'll just do a select hierarchy to grab them all. And you'll see our first curves are linear, but the new ones we added aren't. So we can just set those to linear, and that will make all of these have a nice linear curve on our joints. All right, so that is going to give us our heel twist, our toe twist, and our foot roll done, and with nice linear animation. So as a challenge, what I want you to do is go ahead and set up your heel twist. Once again, just a friendly reminder to save once it's done and save it out as a new iteration. That way, if you make any mistakes, you can go back to the previous file. Let's go ahead and take a look at how to set up our banks next. All right, so we're going to do the banks now, and these are a little bit harder to get to. We're going to select our control here, loaded as the driver, and we'll go ahead and grab bank. But to get to the banks, remember we use some groups there. Now, the easiest way to find those is to go in here to Windows, General Editors, and we'll go ahead and grab that hypergraph hierarchy. Then if you look at your foot joints, you can just click on your heel. You'll see the left bank and right bank are above them. So we can go ahead and shift select those, and we can load those into the driven. Now, we can select them from here, which is nice, and we can see how this goes. We can see it's going to be the rotate Z affecting these. So I'm just going to select both of these, and we'll go ahead and grab the rotate Z over here. And we can just click key at 0 to have the bank do nothing. And then for bank positive, I'm going to have the outward one rotate. So that will be this one here. And this is going to be one that can't go to 90 degrees, but maybe we'll go to -70. That way we have quite a bit of banking ability there, and we can just select both of these. Make sure you select A and B because you want your other one at 0 at this time, and hit key. Then we'll switch sides. So we'll go ahead and swap this to -10, and we'll go to the other bank, which is bank B, and we'll set this to have the same rotation value, which I believe was 70. If you ever forget, you can write it down. Highlight both of those and hit key. And now when we go into the bank, we can see that this can now bank side to side, which is really cool if we need to have that bank a little bit. And in addition to that, it can heel twist and all the other things. It does get a little bit floaty, so you got to be careful there, but it should serve our purpose for the most part. And just double check if you need to what your values are. I believe we use 70s on these, so we should be good. And this was the positive 10. Let's start with positive 10 on the other side, which is having it tilt on the outward. So let's go ahead and grab this one. We'll go ahead and load this as the driver. We'll grab bank. Then once again, we can select our heel, and in our hypergraph hierarchy to find it here, hit F, find the 2 banks above it, and then load those as the driven. And this will be the same deal for these ones, the rotate Z, and we can click key. Then I'll take this to positive 10, and remember we want this to go the opposite direction. So we're going to select the outer bank here, bank A. We're going to rotate that 70, and then we're going to select these and hit key. Then what we can do is we can swap these. So we can go to negative 10, and on negative 10, what we're going to do is come to bank B. We're going to rotate that out to negative 70, select both our banks again over here and hit key. And now if we go ahead and take a look at this, our banks should go side to side, like so. And now we have banking feet. Now, one thing we do need to make sure is we do set these to linear, and this is a little bit trickier because we can't just find these easily. But you'll see they're next to each other here in my hypergraph hierarchy. I'm just going to highlight across both, come in here to my Windows, Animation Editor, Graph Editor, and we can highlight these and just set those to linear. All right, so that is going to finish off our set driven key section here for our rig. The last one we're going to do is the toes, and that's going to require a little bit more setup, and we're going to use something called a direct connection for that. Okay, so as a challenge, what I want you to do is go ahead and finish off your set driven key controls by getting the banks in there. Make sure you save out a new iteration. That way, if you have any issues, you can go back to the previous one, and then we'll take a look at the final control next. For this final control, we're going to use a new feature called a direct connection. To demonstrate that, let me go ahead and introduce a cube here and another cube. A direct connection allows us to directly connect values of one attribute to another. I'm going to highlight these and freeze their transforms so they're all at 0. And if you come in here to Windows General Editors and you look for something called the Connection Editor, you'll get this very interesting menu where you can reload left and reload right, and you have an output and an input. An output is the information that goes out into another input, which is the information it pipes into, and allows us to make a one-to-one connection, meaning the values of one drive the values of another. So for example, let me reload left on this, and this will be our output, and I'll reload right on this one. As a demonstration, what I could do is I could come down here and look for something like this object's rotate, and I could connect it to this object's translate. And what that will do is when this object rotates, you'll see the other object translates in correlation to its rotation. So if I rotate, for example, on a y-axis on this one, it will lift that area there. And you can see how this could be an interesting feature to have. For example, you have something like a turn dial that's supposed to lift a door. You could actually make it so as this turns, it lifts that area. And the way it does it is by directly connecting this value of -5 and rotate to this value of -5 and y. So what we're going to do is we're going to use that on the toe connection here to make it so the toes can rotate infinitely one way or another. Now, we need to do a little bit of setup to achieve this, because what we want to do is we essentially want to lift the ball here to lift the toes, but you'll see that if I come in here, we can't just rotate this because we have an issue of where it rotates from. So a trick to this is to actually rotate the toe handle here, but to rotate it differently. So what we can do is we can take the IK handle of the toe joint, we can Control G that into a group, and we can actually hit D to move that pivot back to here. Now what happens is if I move this group, you'll see that this group has the ability to lift this toe, which is pretty cool. But at the same time, because it's in a group, we still maintain this functionality. So what we'll need to do is find that group. Let me come in here to our General Editor's hypergraph hierarchy. We'll go ahead and click on this handle, and you can see that's the IK handle group there. We're going to name that toe group. and we can hook that up. I'll go through this again a bit slower on the other side. I know that was probably a little bit quick. You can go back and pause if you need to, but yeah. So we'll go through that again. Just be aware, have to do it twice for every side. So now that we have this toe group, we can set up our direct connection. The way we would do that is we just come in here to our Windows General Editor, Connection Editor. We select our control and reload left. Whenever you do this, the custom attributes are always at the bottom. So we can link in toes here. Now with the group, we can find the rotation axes we need, which in this case is going to be rotate Z. And we can come in here to reload right. And if we go ahead and look for the translates, they'll be grayed out, but they'll have a plus icon next to them. So you'll see rotate here. We can select the rotate to connect. In this case, we'll go to rotate Z. Now what will happen is if I come to the toes here and I middle mouse drag, it will go ahead and do that, and it can do it infinitely. We don't have to use a set driven key to drive this. So you can see how we can use that to drive this entire area, which is really useful. And now we have the ability to make those toes go whenever we want, a little bit different than the foot roll, and we can push it beyond that. So for example, if I do the foot roll here, because this is being controlled by something completely different, I can still do the toes with the foot roll to get a wide range of custom shapes. Okay, so let's set those all back to 0, and let's take a look at this again on the other side. I have my various menus open to make this a little bit easier. I'm going to turn off my proxy geo. The first step is to grab the toe IK control here, to group it with Control G, and that's going to give us this group above it. You then hit D to move the pivot of the group, V to snap to vertex to our ball joint there. It looks like there's multiple snap points, so make sure you get the correct one and don't accidentally rotate it like what's happening on my screen. Once you have it set, hit D, and you can go ahead and name this if you would like. Make this our toe rotation group. And we can set this up with our direct connection. So we can load this as the left, go down here and highlight toes, and then we can reload this as the right. And what's cool here is it will maintain the positioning. So you can come to rotation here and you can click rotate Z. And now if we go ahead and take a look at this proxy geo, you'll see that we have our toes functioning on this side as well. Now, let's say you made a mistake though, and let's say you clicked on rotate X. You'll see, ooh, that's not going to give you the motion you want. With the connection editor, it's very easy to disconnect. All you have to do is click on it and it will disconnect. Just make sure you're at 0 when you disconnect, so that way it doesn't have a value on it. But that's all you have to do to disconnect a direct connection, is just click on it so it's not highlighted and it won't be there anymore. Okay, so that should give our reverse foot its full functionality here. There is our lovely toes, all functioning. There is our banks, all functioning. Here's our heel twists, our toe twists, our foot rolls, and we have a nice range of motion. All right, so that is going to complete the reversed foot. Seems like a lot of work, but it goes by pretty quickly when you break it down step by step. And we got a chance to incorporate set driven keys and direct connections. Make sure you save once you have this done. And as a challenge, what I want you to do is I want you to go through the process of using the direct connection with the connection editor yourself to hook up these toes. All right, so go ahead and give that a shot, and then we'll get into the final stretch of the control rig next. Be sure to like and subscribe so you can catch the next video in the series when it goes live.